as we were starting to talk about before we hit record, I'm kind of mad at you because it's like, 3 pages of notes here, and there's so much stuff that I don't do that it's made me question everything, and that's what we do this for, though. And I was telling you that I loved what you said about reconfirming, like TFC reconfirms a lot of the things that you already do. And I think I almost feel sorry for a real young coach that attends TFC because they don't have a foundation yet.
Right.
And it's almost like they get sent in too many directions. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think, you gotta have a foundational base of where you're headed before you can start into all the fancy stuff. I mean, I've been at this for 25 years. So I kind of know a little bit of what's worked, what hasn't worked. And so it's easy to grab, hey, Tony's doing this different deal. How can we fit that into our programming? That's a real easy fix. But when you present, you're presented something that blows what you do out of the water, it's like, where do I go from there? So I'm also thankful. I mean, you and I have a lot of similarities that way. I mean, I just did it all myself for a lot of years before I started, reaching out to other coaches and, really reconfiguring what I do for the last 15, 20 years.
Right. And the stuff that at this point in your career and my career, the stuff that we find that we love, we have to decide whether or not it fits with our foundation and what we do. Now, that doesn't mean that some coaches should not throw away their foundation.
Right.
Some foundations are bullshit, you need to blow it up and start over again. But yeah, I think that we're very lucky. But even with that, I think I've gone through 7 presentations, and I think this is my 6th or 7th podcast, and my brain is almost burnt. There's so much great material that I just have to start sleeping more or something.
Well, I mean, I've heard you talk, I don't know how many times now, and I watched your presentation on the flight back from Miami. My wife and I took a little vacation, and I wanted to call you when I got back and say, man, that's one of the best presentations I've ever heard you. And it was all the same stuff, but it was the way you put it together. And I heard some things differently than I hadn't heard before. And, you can listen to the same person 12 times over and get, different results each time.
I totally agree. Matter of fact, I've probably had maybe 200 conversations with Chris Corfus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my next one will be one of the best ones. Like it's always
right.
It's almost like, like there's some people like Chris that it's like I will constantly learn. There even stuff that I rehear. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but I'm the type of person that I have to rehear something like 20 times before I figure it out.
Yeah, I'm not smart enough to learn it on the first 5 times. So I definitely need 5, 6, 7 times over.
I think I'd spent 100 hours with Douglas Heel with Be Activated, which was the precursor for RPR. Yep. I think I wrote more about Be Activated than any human on the planet.
Sure.
But yet I was one of the last people to actually get my hands on a kid and work on it.
Right.
And so that's just the way I am. It just takes me a long time to feel comfortable enough to finally do it. Now, you've dabbled into RPR now, right?
Yeah, we use it every day. We use it both in our track and field program and in my private sector facility. We use it with every athlete we train.
Now, everybody does. I mean, RPR is RPR, but the implementation is just fascinating. I mean, this past year, even though it was an abbreviated year, was the first time, okay, previously for like the last 5 years, I would take my table to a track meet, and all my best sprinters were totally addicted. They had to have it done. We ran faster because of it. We had no soft tissue injuries. We had a couple cramp situations that weren't injuries, but still RPR fixed that as well. So last year was the first time I went from me working on kids only in performance situations to actually doing it in our warm-ups.
Yep.
And to do that, I think I did it in a way that nobody else does it. How do you do it?
Well, yeah, I mean, in a similar fashion, I used to just work on kids myself in kind of a very rudiment way of active release. And when I saw RPR and kind of started to learn about it, I thought, man, here's a way we can get all kids a little bit of, body care. The way we implement it is we use it as a kind of a precursor even to our warm up. And, for us, our warm up's a very dynamic warm up, speed drills. We're probably very similar that way. We're not jogging or, extensive running for a warm up, but we just bring them right out of the gates, and we belly breathe and hit zone 1 and 2.
Do you lay down or are you upright?
We've been upright. I tried the lay down thing a couple times with, I know JT does some lay down RPR out in California. So we've tried a couple times, but I've just found, especially in a small group setting, or even with our entire track team, we just take the track, they start their belly breathing, then we go through zone 1, zone 2. They know the routine now where I barely even have to do it. We might be setting up a drill or our free lap for the day. And we just say, let's get your RPR in, guys. And they know the routine now themselves.
What's the total time?
I'd say we're under 2 minutes.
You are. Okay. That's interesting. So they are going pretty quick. Mm-hmm. And how many points do you think you hit?
We take them through. We go belly breathing. We go
the 3 zone 1s.
Zone 1, diaphragm, psoas, glutes. We go quads, hamstrings, calves, and core.
Okay.
And lateral sling.
And lateral sling too. So you're hitting around 7 points. I mean, obviously, and that's why I asked, because you can do so much more than that. Like my son Quinn was in charge of doing it for their varsity football team at Andrew High School. And he did it where they'd hit 1 point and do a drill.
Yeah.
And hit another point and do a drill. And he had, even though they had no players miss a game all season, which, that's anecdotal, but still he felt like it was like swimming against the current. It was hard, and they didn't get buy-in from the other staff members. So they'd be like drinking coffee and talking while he was working with like 70 kids. Right. And so what I did was kind of like you, I just asked the guys, give me 90 seconds of your time.
Yep.
I want 90 seconds where nobody freaking talks.
Yep.
And I did it along with them. And if somebody talked or something, I'd say eyes. And if they still did it, you're gone.
Yeah.
Come back tomorrow. And so it probably lasted 2.5 minutes, but I asked for 90 seconds, and I really liked it.
I would say that. So I had just gotten level 1 certified last December, I think it was. And I was all set to implement it into our outdoor season last year, right before COVID hit. And of course, my staff members thought I was an idiot, and what are we doing and all that kind of stuff. But we kind of started it, and I was doing the same thing. I was going to integrate it periodically throughout the dynamic warm-up, which was one of the suggestions, was you don't have to do it all at once. But same thing, I didn't like that flow. And then, I don't know, I probably just didn't understand it well enough to get other zones going. So we just concentrated on zone 1 for the first, 5 months I was using it. I had Ayers out here from California. He visited for a couple days. And I said, practice one day, I said, hey, you take the kids through RPR, show me how you do it. And he just got out in front of them and went through this little routine that was super user-friendly, super seamless. And the kids just, it's like they bought in right then and there. He had some cueing that was really good. It wasn't quite as scientific or trying to find the perfect angles. He's like, hey, we're going to scratch our ribs. Let's go. Let's scratch our ribs. And he kind of, the way he went through it really was digestible for a high school kid. So we took that and ran with it, and it's been really good ever since. And now I'm opening a facility here in about 3 weeks, and we started implementing it with in the private sector as well. First thing they do when they show up, we take them through it before we start doing anything.
Well, first of all, if that Ayers guy had a little enthusiasm, he could be a pretty good coach.
You see, if he could just come out of his shell a little bit.
Yeah, he's so timid, and so, I worked with him on the podcast a little bit about just, the enthusiasm makes the difference, and I think he understands. He's going to try to do better. But
he's got a motor, that's for sure.
oh my goodness, what a guy. I mean, and to think what a cool story that was, where I thought for sure that you knew him because you gave him credit at TFC last year.
Yeah.
And so me being the social media nut I am, I actually texted him and said, "Hey man, you're getting some cred in Chicago right now." He goes, "What?" I said, "Well, Kula's giving you some credit." He goes, Kula, who's that? You know? And so anyway, and then how you and I met.
Yeah.
What's that?
I tried to do the proper thing and like give, you know, proper credit to, you know, who I got the quote from. I'd actually found that quote probably online, just looking up Mass Pacific Force stuff. And, you know, gosh, you just never know, you know, guy in Illinois, out in California, and all these guys that, you know, think the same way that I do. And here we are now, I don't know, a year later, not even, I mean, I don't even think it's been almost, 13 months since you first reached out to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a story about how you and I figured stuff out. Somebody actually sent me the Stack article that just blew up, you know, and said, "Oh my God, this guy is feeding the cats." And I'm like, "Hell yeah, he's feeding the cats. He's read all my stuff." And so I call you. He goes, "No, I don't know who you are. And I've never heard of feeding the cats." And so, but the fact is, we're willing to reach out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And become friends and stay up way too late in a Dallas Hilton hotel talking about this stuff. And
done that. Yeah, no, I'm very thankful for that. I mean, just the community itself has really helped me grow as a coach and you know, been challenged a few times, but also just, you know, reaffirmed, you know, what we're doing. And it's I think when you know, when people reach out, they want to know what you're doing and you try to explain it to them, man, that makes you a better coach. Like, you know, my wife challenges me all the time, you know, you ought to charge for your advice, you know, and I'm like, actually, it's actually helping me probably more than it's helping the person I'm giving advice to, because I'm having to, you know, dive deep and make sure I'm giving them exactly what they want.
Well, when people ask me stuff, and a lot of times I'm asked the same questions over and over again, I sharpen up my answers. I find new ways to say the old things. And the other thing I like to mention is I feel somehow uplifted a little bit when somebody, I think people love to be asked questions.
Oh, for sure.
You know?
Yep.
And so young guys should not, I mean, I talked to a lacrosse coach from the University of Southern Virginia last night for an hour. Wow. And that was like the highlight of my day. Yeah. I mean, that was good, you know, and so I don't think people should ever worry about reaching out.
No, not at all. Like I said, I mean, I love to try to bless others that are, you know, out there maybe struggling or don't quite understand it. Cause I mean, there's a giant cupboard of ingredients, right? And like, where do you start? For some guys, I get it, especially if you're kind of stuck in an old school mentality of, you know, how to generate speed, how to train. And so to try to help them, you know, iron that out and dial down a little bit of really where to head is, I think it's a gift, and it challenges you as a coach. You know, I don't love fielding a phone call and not having an answer for somebody. So
yeah, right. And, you know, and also, how about when somebody asks you a question and you really can't defend, you know, what you do, and you're like, you know, you're probably right. I probably shouldn't do that, you know, and that's good too.
And every now and again, a little humble pie, you know, of like, you know, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. You hang up and go back to the drawing board. And I think that's in my mind, that's probably the key component to any system or coach model that you're operating under is what's your level of adaptability to the athletes that you're working with. You know, what works for, you know, you in a cold weather state or me in a cold weather state works a little different for JT out in California. You know, that son of a gun is 80 degrees on the track every day that he wants to be. And that's a completely different model than it is for us here in Colorado, where we go through 3 or 4 months of pretty cold, you know, snowy conditions. So, you know, realizing those things is very important, I feel like.
Yeah, we have to, you know, I love the term, we have to grow where we're planted.
Yeah.
And you know, like there'll be, you know, like trolls in Texas saying, "Oh, your 400 guys suck," you know, and I'm like, they're pretty Illinois good. You know, I'm sorry that we're not as good as Texas, where things are a little different in Texas.
Sure.
You know, the dopamine, the more football players run track in Texas than any other state.
Yep.
And there's some really advantages that Texas has. That doesn't mean I'm downgrading them. I'm just saying that some Texas 4x1 that runs 40 point might not run 40 point in Chicago.
Right. Well, yeah, I've always taken a lot of pride in coming out of a cold weather state. I mean, our girls 4x4 finished number 4 in the nation 2 years ago. And, you know, we're coming out of an environment where we have a 12-week track season and we're cold for half of it. And, you know, we ran 3:41 with those girls. And I think DeSoto ran a little faster than us and maybe, you know, one other Texas school. But, you know, when you're comparing apples to apples, it's a different deal. I mean, I never like to go to Texas relays as a high school coach because those guys are a solid 2 months ahead of us. You know, we're still climbing out of the iceberg up here in Colorado when they're outdoors running.
Let's do a little exercise here where we, you know, like we do a Venn diagram thing.
Yeah.
Where we try to first of all come up with the things that we both do or we do in similar ways, and then we'll talk about some of the differences.
Yeah.
I think I can name a couple of them after seeing your presentation.
Sure.
You're a free lap guy.
Yep.
RPR. You are not a fatigue guy. I mean, like even the stuff that you know, kind of apologize for in your video where Wednesday's a grinding day and oh God, you know, lactate day on Saturday. But still your overall volume is still real low.
It's very low. And it's really funny how all the reference to Clyde Hart stuff that you have, because I sent 4 athletes to Baylor when I was at Littleton High School. And I got to know that system really well. I had a gentleman on my staff that had run at Baylor, and I got to be pretty close with Michael Ford, and I really learned what they were doing down there. And we were running that system at Littleton High School. I mean, I was not feeding the cats at Littleton High School. That's for sure.
You would agree that's pretty much the opposite.
It's 100% the opposite.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I said in my presentation, there are different ways to skin the cat. You know, I do believe that that's the case. And a lot of it has to do with how do you as a coach get your kids to buy into what you're doing. I mean, we were the school in 2003 that lined up and ran 10 200s on Mondays. And I had kids puking and quitting, and, you know, they didn't like track, but we ran, you know, 316 and 350 in the mile relays and won a couple of state titles doing it that way. But we're getting the similar results, maybe better results, doing it different and drastically different. So, you know.
Well, and then of course, the thing you and I both know is that we are, no matter where you're at, you always hope that the fastest kids in your school want to come out for track.
Right.
And if you're doing it the old school way, you're not going to get every kid.
Sure.
You might get every kid when you try to make practice as, I mean, you try to do the least amount possible to be really good.
Right. Well, and you know, you just have to know your environment. When I brought that system that I was running at Littleton High School, we were the boys and girls 5A state champions in Colorado. I brought that over to Valor as a small private Christian school just opening up, and we started that system, and I couldn't get a kid to come to practice. And so I quickly had to make a change of how we were going to approach things in a place that had a top 50 ranked football program, just a totally different environment. At Littleton High School, we weren't good at anything else. So kids were going to come out for track regardless, you know, whether we were running cross country practice or speed, it didn't matter. They were going to come because it was successful. So, but, you know, and even nowadays, I mean, even here, I have a few athletes that need or desire a little more, you know, whether it's how they were raised or their mom or dad was in track. And so they ran them on a bunch of hills as little kids, and they just kind of feed off of some level of volume. You know, you have to be able to, I think, identify those athletes and give them what they need. You know, I think the vast majority, and the more and more even being reconfirmed on the airplane 2 days ago from your presentation, and I love the quote, and I'm stealing it, it's written on my board here forever, is fast is fast. That's to me, in my mind, that sums up exactly what, you know, everybody argues about. somebody who is fast is going to be fast at any distance. So, you know, the max velocity of a kid is hugely important.
And they're even fast when they're tired.
100%. Well, that's the Christian McCaffrey thing that everybody asks me about. You know, you only train him 4.5 hours a week and you never run over 30 yards. How does he play 4 quarters and get 96% of the plays in, you know, in a game? Nobody in the NFL does that. Well, it's the 80 mile an hour deal. You know, his speed reserves are so high that he doesn't even have to be in full speed to be faster than everybody around him. So, you know, it's been proven in multiple different venues with different athletes, professionals, high school kids, track, football, basketball, where these kids go back into their sport in shape or you know, with an aerobic capacity from doing a bunch of anaerobic work. It's been pretty cool to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you could even take that fast and flip it to the other way. And this is interesting. You know, like after a 400, I think the guy that is the least tired after a 400 is the guy who won.
Yeah.
And the guy that's the most tired is the guy who got last. that for some reason slow tires more than
Sure.
fast does. And you and I both know why, is because fast is efficient, it's
Right.
elastic, there's not much of an energy cost.
Right.
Whereas muscular, slow, non-elastic uses a shit ton of energy.
Sure.
And they get tired.
And I kind of started out, I mean, I've always loved the sprints. I was a decathlete by nature. But, you know, I kind of thought I'd hang my hat on the 400 meters because I saw it as an event where we could really have a much higher ceiling for improvement for kids. You know, it's like, you know, I'm only going to have X amount of sub 11-second sprinters, but man, I can make a whole bunch of sub 50-point quarter milers through just a bunch of hard work. You know, it's kind of where I started my career. But then all of a sudden I started realizing that, okay, we're trying to formulate what you can run in the 400-meter dash. Where do we always start? We always start by what's your 200-meter PR. And then we work backwards from there of the differential and the fatigue factor.
What determines your 200 meters?
Yeah, you're exactly.
Your 100, right?
And so
what determines your 100? You know, so it all backs into speed.
Well, and like I gave an example in my podcast, and those are real stories. I mean, my little Nate Yorks in 2005 hadn't run a 400 all season. We threw him in the state finals because we needed a leg, and he split between 45.8 and 46 flat. I had 3 or 4 different coaches with watches on him, sub 46 seconds. But he was a 10.3 and a 20.8 sprinter, and his speed allowed him to run that fast. Now, I realize some kids just have a higher propensity for tolerating lactic acid, and, you know, they can jump in and do those things. And some kids would rig like no other if you did that to them. But the point is, you know, he was able to go cruise 21.5 for the first 200, you know, because he was a 20.8 guy. There isn't a 22 flat guy that's ever going to split 21.5 ever.
Never. And every coach has those stories. If you remember, Vince Anderson had the same story in a college situation where in the national championship, somebody was down one guy and they had the question, do we put our great 800-meter guy in there, or do we put our great sprinter who's never run a 400?
Yep. And
they put the sprinter in and he runs a 45.
Every time.
Yep. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that pisses a lot of people off, because there is a lot of work that goes into a Clyde Hart system.
Oh, for sure.
And like that, it's almost like they're acting like everything we do is, I can understand why they get upset, but.
Well, the other part, and I admire Clyde and his work. I mean, you know, but like Jeremy Warner and Michael Johnson, those were 20-point sprinters coming out of high school. So there was already speed development had been taking place. So then I believe at some level you can afford then to maybe back off some of that development and work on some volume. And so to take a Clyde Hart system, which is really built for the collegiate professional athlete, and try to implement it in high school is borderline stupid. And yours truly fell, you know, hook, line, and sinker for a couple of years.
I did until I was 40.
Because
everybody did it. That was the prevailing wisdom.
Well, and frankly, if you really look at it, it doesn't take a whole lot of, not effort, but it doesn't take a lot of knowledge to run the dog tar out of kids, right? I mean, it's pretty easy to run a 10 by 200 workout. When I used to have those workouts, I loved those days. Those were easy for me because I stood there with a stopwatch and all I had to do was motivate kids to finish, you know. And now in a max velocity day or an acceleration, you know, day, there's a lot of setup, there's a lot of formulation, there's a lot of coaching, there's a lot of cueing. You know, it's more than just run your butt 200 meters and get there in 30 seconds. Yeah. It's teaching kids how to run properly. And I think that's the separator.
Yeah. You're herding cats, not an easy task.
No.
So no, that stuff, I love talking about that. And, you know, something that people don't talk about enough is, like, I look back when I was a freshman in high school, I was 6'2", 140 pounds. Yeah. And just compare that with Michael Johnson when he was a freshman in college. He was a man. Yeah. You know, and so for us to plug in to 15-year-olds, the same thing that Michael Johnson's doing at Baylor. Yeah. I understand why they did it, because Baylor had success, but also there's a cross-country factor. A lot of high school coaches are distance coaches, and those workouts kind of help feed your cross-country program. Sure. And so they like it.
Sure. Well, and yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, I've had distance coaches in the past that, you know, hey, we got a speed workout this week. Well, yeah, what are you doing? Well, we're running, you know, 15 400s. You know, and now I'm scratching my head going, what an idiot I was to buy into that was a speed workout, you know, for those guys. But I mean, even our cross-country coach here, who you could argue is one of the better guys in the country right now, having coached a couple of the top kids around, on one day a week, he runs fly 30s with our cross-country team.
Hey, do you know what's his name?
His name's Greg Copeland.
Okay.
He's been here with me as my distance coach and our head cross-country coach, cool. I think for about 8 years. But our girls are currently ranked in the top 5 in the nation. He had one of the top 3 boys in the country last year, Cole Sprout, who's off to Stanford. But he's done a phenomenal job, and he's done it with lower mileage speed workouts. I mean, you know, it's very, very frequently he walks in my office and says, hey, can I put a 4x4 on the track this weekend in our track meet with our distance kids? Which is a little bit of a different model than what a lot of distance guys want to do in regards to lots of races, lots of mileage.
Now, one of the things that would be, you've done a lot to influence me on this, on the whole Barry Ross underground secret propaganda, but, and of course, JT as well. But one of the things, now, am I right that we're both coaches' kids?
Yes, sir.
But my dad he was like a college basketball and baseball athlete, and he was a basketball coach. Your dad was actually in the weight room.
He was, yeah. He was, I would call him, you know, my dad was just really low key. He never really aspired to go out and, you know, maybe do what I've been trying to do here recently with a business and all that stuff. But that guy was what I would call one of the first high school strength coaches around. I mean, back in the 70s, he was deep into the Russian training model and Eastern European stuff, and, you know, bigger, faster, stronger on the very front edge of that stuff was Greg Shepard, I believe.
Yeah, I loved it.
And my dad was all about that. He built the weight room at Windsor High School in 1982 by himself. He knocked walls out. He started the weight program at Windsor High School. And
when did he have his first universal gym?
Oh boy. Well, I think there was one in the weight room when we moved into Windsor. And
yeah.
But you know, to his innovation, he got rid of that thing and put in racks and platforms and started Olympic lifting and, you know, doing all the things that are now so in vogue. My dad was doing in the early 80s. And just, you know, like I kind of told the story of when I was 14 years old, I was about $105, and he put me in a powerlifting contest. And I think I broke our school record, 195-pound deadlift for my little freshman. But I look back now and I know exactly why he was doing it. And I think he was light years ahead of his time of understanding the importance of training. I won't even say weight training necessarily, but he understood training and athleticism.
Now, it's interesting that the S&C world today is not very old. I mean, We're talking like it was at the end of the 60s
Yep.
before some football program said we need to start lifting weights.
Right.
And they hired a bodybuilder, Boyd Epley, at Nebraska. And all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, slowly a profession grew from that.
Right.
And, Nebraska was starting like 218-pound offensive tackles back then.
Yep.
Only like one guy on the team could lift over 280 on the bench. I mean, it was just a totally different game.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen overnight. I
Right.
mean, there were still NBA teams didn't start lifting until, God, like the Bulls, right?
Right.
And the Jazz,
right.
back in the 90s.
Right.
So the fact that you were kind of born in a weight room, I think just gives you that something that I've never felt as comfortable with.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, and he always used to do a really good job of teaching form and mechanics. And I mean, there's a lot of not to throw stones or anything. There's a lot of bad weight room coaches out there. You get in there and they think though the main goal is just to lift a lot of weight, that more muscle equals better performance, and those things have been just they're all myths. And people are now starting to kind of come back and realize, and obviously innovation, and maybe we've gone even a little too far that way and need to get back to some of the basics. And that's where my philosophies have been born out of, is we're not going to do all the fancy stuff and have all the fancy equipment. And that's why I fell in love with some of Barry's approach to it. Is it was super simple. It had a lot of multi-joint activity, kind of bang for your buck kind of stuff. And that's what my pops was doing in 1980. We would squat and deadlift and we were cleaning. And then, we'd go outside and we'd sprint. I mean, we never ran distance. We never did anything like that. And, my little 2A high school we had 350 kids in our entire high school. In my class alone, we had 4 All-Americans and a guy that played 5 years in the NFL. So I think he was onto something. And yeah, I was privy to all that. I mean, when I was in 4th, 5th grade, I was in his hip pocket in the weight room watching him teach hang cleans. So,
yeah, and when I look at college football S&C people, they fit pretty neatly into 3 categories. And I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings and them want a refund from TFC, but they're either those cheerleader types, that like bark on the sideline and wear this medium shirts.
Yeah.
And they're embarrassing to the whole world. And then there's the power lifters that want to lift as much weight as possible. You can tell they're power lifters by the way they look.
Sure.
And then there's the bodybuilders, and they will all say they love speed, but you and I both know they're not track coaches, which brings me to, if you remember, the first night we had a beer together, I think it was like last year at this time, it was after TFC. And I asked you, I said, can you imagine what you could do for a Division I football team if you went in as their S&C guy? And you just kind of smiled and said, yeah, we would revolutionize it.
Yeah.
And you really would, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember. Somebody put out on Twitter something about, speed is the new KPI for strength and conditioning, and I fully believe that. And I think that, again, I have some connections and relationships with folks even in the NFL world that just don't believe that there's enough knowledge out there of how to properly develop speed and to program it and train it properly, because most of the gals grow up in a weight room environment. And that might be a little bit of your tilt of, you haven't seen that work real well. And that's the truth, because if that's the only deal, I mean, I remember Boyd Epley put out an article, must have been in the mid 90s, maybe, about he had a group of football players and they did an experiment where they didn't run for like 12 weeks. All they did was lifted weights, but they did a pre and post test of a 40-yard dash. And nearly all of them improved like between 0.15 and 0.2 in the 40-yard dash just from lifting weights. And so I do believe that there is some anecdotal, evidence that strength does equate to some additional speed because there's additional force. But I think the bigger bang for your buck is the mechanics and the fast twitch recruitment and, you know, the things that we're after as a track coach, which in my mind is more of a field tested environment for speed. You know, of course, an exercise phys, a strength conditioning coach is going to have a level of speed development learning and education and research. But in my mind, if you haven't had to put a 4x1 on the line at the state track meet and win it, then I don't know that you can fully appreciate and understand what speed development really is. And I don't mean to offend anybody in any way, but I think if anything, we just have an advantage because we've been in the field of that in practice on a daily basis for 25 years. And so, yeah, we've picked up a couple little things, you know, along the way that happen outside of that weight room, you know, one strip of turf. I'm a strength and conditioning type of a coach. And we'll let the football coach run the team and make them faster that way. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be had about being a track coach in this industry.
Would you agree that somebody can drink our Kool-Aid and say that we are going to make speed the priority without hurting strength?
No. I mean, I think, again, I hesitate to be so black and white about it because, I mean, I've lived in two different worlds, right? I coached football for 21 years. I've coached track and field. I work with NFL football players. I also work with professional track athletes, and I work with freshman female high school athletes. So I have this deal, and I don't know that, you know, you can just dismiss weight training for a football player in a contact sport.
No,
So
I'm not talking about dismissing. I'm saying that you could make speed the priority without losing weight room strength.
no.
You understand what I mean? Like you don't have to, like I just believe that prioritizing speed does not hurt strength.
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah.
It enhances it. It enhances it.
Yes.
By training for speed and increasing fast twitch, you actually will increase strength in the weight room. I mean, there have been studies shown of speed work and having increased max performances in the weight room without additional weight training.
Yes. And I think that's a real selling point to, you know, to like college football, SNC or professional football. But, you know, I wouldn't want to have that job because I wouldn't want to be told what to do by the head football coach.
No doubt.
I would hate that.
I probably field 1 to 2 emails or phone calls a week that says, hey, we love what you do. We'd really love to implement it. But man, my head coach, I just can't, he can't wrap his head around sitting for 5 minutes in the weight room. He can't wrap his head around 3 fly 10s for our workout for the day. And so, you know, at some level I say, well, here's what it is. And here's the evidence. And here's arguably the best running back in the NFL. But, you know, if they are too stubborn to listen, then I can't help you much.
And then there's also, after a loss, some S&C people are told, you know, I want you to punish them. Yeah. You know, like they double down on conditioning and stuff. And Vince would call that a 14-point turnaround. Instead of getting faster that day, you made them slower. Yep. You know, that's double bad.
Sure. Well, and we went through it. I mean, you know, my dad was really good at what he did, but they weren't a lot different back in the 80s. You know, we went without water and we ran what we called pro sprints, which was a goal line to 5, goal line to 10, goal line to 15, goal line to 20, you know, all the way for 100 yards. And we'd run a couple of those on a Monday following a game. Talk about emptying your tank early in the week. I'm amazed we won any football games in high school, but I mean, you know, we overcame it. We're pretty talented.
Well, and dumb always beats dumber.
Yeah.
You know, when every program is doing similar things. Right. Probably the funniest story I've ever heard, a private school, one of those cheating private schools. I'm sorry, your school's private. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, one of these cheating private schools around here, they would put the water thing like a quarter mile away from the field and make guys sprint to the water and sprint back. And the seniors got smart and just said, F it. We don't need water.
Yeah. Smartest guys on the team.
We don't need water. Oh. So, so many stories. I mean, my youngest son was their varsity football program, which thought they were progressive. They actually did like a 100-meter sprint for every point they gave up.
Wow.
That's on Monday. And not only does that make you hate Monday, but it ruins Tuesday.
Right.
Because they gave up a lot of points.
Sure.
Probably because they didn't practice defense enough.
I
want to talk about.
I don't ever like to come off as like, so pretentious that we don't ever have a little bit of a tough session for kids to challenge them mentally. I mean, I love, your lactic workouts. Your 4x4 predictor is a tough workout. I mean, our kids, they like the end result of knowing where they're at, but that's a hard workout for them. And that's 3 150s, so it's not like you're afraid to lay it down every now and again. And you understand that, a 200-meter dash in a track meet it's a hard race for kids. It tips them over a little bit. So occasionally, just occasionally though. I mean, I think that's the difference is not hammering.
So too. And I was having this dumb debate webinar thing with the guy last summer, and he was like making fun of my workouts that we don't work hard enough and stuff. And I know what he was really upset with. I said that my lactate workouts are so hard that I literally apologize to my kids before we do it. I told him, I said, this is really going to suck.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's like, apologize? Who apologizes to their kids? We want to teach them to be tough. I go, you think my kids aren't tough?
Yeah.
They're tough. They killed themselves that day.
Right.
And I was authentic with them. Okay. So anyway, yeah, there's some misconceptions out there, but I think that 4x150 or 3x150 or the 3x200 predictor are two. Matter of fact, the 3x150 is harder than the 3x200 because you have to go so hard.
Right.
I mean, it's just, oof.
And I've done those type of workouts my whole career, and I think they're valuable. And I can even look back at, when we used to be more volume and when we really got the most out of our kids was when we'd have those, just pushing the ceiling, being up in the 98, 99 percentile, which again, now lets me reflect back on, okay, when we're going to do something, should we ever do anything really slow? It almost takes me back literally to the first coach I ever tried to copy and I read about, and I can remember the old magazine. I wish I could remember the name of it, but Bill Carson at East Carolina, who was he's an old timer. He's passed away since, but he had, they did everything in spikes. Everything was fast, always. And I remember that resonating with me of like, well, that's really fun. First of all, kids love to put spikes on, and they love to run fast. I didn't love to line up and run intervals in college. I mean, I think I quit track 12 or 15 times in my mind, over some of those workouts. So it certainly has, again, a lot of it is what is your approach? What's your end game? For me, my end game is we want to be competitive. We want to run fast, of course, but we also want to have a bunch of kids that feel like the track program's a family. They love, it's the best part of their day. Some of your stuff talking about practice is the best part of the day, not the worst part of the day. And we have that going on. Kids love to show up, even on a tough, they call them terrible Tuesdays when we start a little bit of our tempo work on a Tuesday or lactic workouts, but they still show up and they're happy and they know it's going to be one hard day out of the week and they can brush it off with an off day following. And, the other days of the week, they can't wait to get there. So what's your end game? And I think a lot of your concepts, a lot of the concepts that we utilize is tilted towards that. Can we still be relational with the kids? They know we love them, and we're trying to do things that's the best thing for them. And I can't ever imagine when somebody's just dogging a kid, yelling at them and back on the line and you're going to puke and that the kid actually thinks that you really care about them, So.
Yes. I was going to ask you when you're talking about lactate, I just saw this.
Yeah.
Is there, okay, your training of McCaffrey in the off season, mm-hmm. definitely mimics what football is all about. I mean, you're definitely using the ATP PC system. You're ignoring. You're going to get aerobic benefits, but you don't have anything that's aerobically focused ever. Is there a time, even though there's not a single long sprint ever in football where they feel dizzy, like, there's no 400 meters in football, there's no 200 meters. Is there in your mind a place for like an end of the week lactate session or no?
Never.
I think so.
Never. And it might be different with him than it would potentially be maybe with your high school football team, but with an NFL guy, and I've considered those things because when I program for Christian, I literally sit down and program it through the lens of a track coach. And how am I going to develop his max velocity, his acceleration? And, and that's how we part the week out. Even on a change of direction, agility type of a day, it's through the lens of pushing through the ground, acceleration, deceleration, all those things. And it's kind of like, I'm not an expert in change of direction agility. I feel like I'm an expert in linear speed development. And all I've done is taken those concepts and those principles and applied them to change of direction movement. So I guess, to get back to your original question, we don't do that stuff ever. I don't feel like in a football game, you ever reach a level where you have to tolerate lactic acid.
Right.
There's too much rest interval. It's a 5 to 6 second play followed by a 30-second rest, which means that you're partially recovered in your ATP system and you're not going to get into the lactic system. Now, a little bit of anaerobic capacity, the ability to run fast over and over and over again with periodic rest is, that's what we're after, but we can accomplish that by just raising his speed reserve.
Sure.
Oh, no, we don't ever do anything like that. His very hardest day would be maybe pre-camp. We would throw in some longer accelerations. And by longer, I'm talking 50 yards with maybe a shorter recovery of 15 seconds, 20 seconds recovery, just to get him ready. Honestly, not to get him ready for what he should be doing, but to get him ready for what he's going to be doing. Does that make sense?
It does.
Because again, and all the respect in the world to the Panthers organization and all the different NFL teams, and they have to, I suppose, have something in place to make sure the guys are working during the summertime. But, the conditioning tests and the amount of load that they put on these professional athletes is they're turning steak into hamburger.
Yeah.
Across the board.
Yes. Now, it's interesting when I watch McCaffrey workouts and things, and this is something, this word is like popped into my head in the last year. Like we were saying earlier, we figure out different ways to describe what we do or characterize what we do. But I say now that in a feed the cats type of program that really may differ from one coach or one school to another, there's actually performing going on in practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when I watch McCaffrey's stuff, it would be accurate to say that he performs in every workout.
His performance starts in his dynamic warm-up.
Yes.
That guy, to an almost sick level, he pays attention to every single thing that he does in a level of performance. And so that includes, a fly 10. We had an extended off season this year with no mini camps. And so we took some time on the track and he bought a pair of track spikes. And you watched him warm up and get ready for a fly 10 attempt. You would have thought he was lining up for the finals of the Olympic Games in the 100-meter dash. So 100% performance driven, which again, when you train at that level, the need to do more is not necessary. It's just not. And again, can I explain why scientifically? No, but I know the training matches the game that he plays. And then I have a 4-year history now that has watched him be, perform as well, if not better than anybody else at his position.
I love that. And I think that when you say, okay, yeah, we perform every day in practice and we do at the high school level. When you say that, and then we go back to the way we went through high school practices, there was never a performance.
No.
In track, we were doing some maximal runs is not a performance.
Right.
In football practice, we were always tired from the day before. Sure. We were tough. Maybe we're both tough guys now from everything we went through, but I was never as fast as I should have been.
Oh, I wish daily that I could have coached myself.
We would have been Olympians.
we got a little joke, you know, us coaches sitting in the stands, like if I could coach that kid, boy, he'd be really good, right? We all have that mentality. But yeah, no, I mean, I really was never really taught how to sprint. And as good as my dad was in the world of, you know, strength conditioning and performance, he didn't have a lot of knowledge in some of the stuff that I've learned and that I've been privy to. And I think it's a pretty small circle of people that really truly understand. You know, I'm blessed to have a bunch of staff members on my staff that are really, really good trainers, but I still have to take time to, you know, ensure that they know what to look for and how to cue it and how to teach it so that it's done really well. There's just not a lot of people out there that have that knowledge. And so, yeah, it's a fun environment to, you know, back and forth with other coaches on, because I think it's a pretty small circle.
Now, I want to talk about Mary Beth Sant.
Mhm.
She seems like one of your favorites.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. And I am just
right there. You see her?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the fact that you coach the best running back, the #1 draft pick in all fantasy leagues this year, but you also coach a 5', 103-pound girl who can deadlift 300 pounds and box squat 420.
Yep.
That must just confirm, because it's like you are coaching almost like polar opposites. It'd be different if you only did McCaffrey's, only NFL running backs, but you're taking little girls and turn them into world-class sprinters.
Well, and yeah, and I mean, you know, I try to say this all the time. Christian McCaffrey is going to be really good without Brian Kula. I mean, he's a phenomenal athlete and he works hard and he is well read and studied in training principles. He loves training. I mean, there'll come a day real soon he ain't going to need me much. I know he likes my guidance and whatnot, but he knows what he's doing. And so he'd be really good regardless. But yeah, I mean, the systematic approach that we use with him and with Mary Beth and with our little girls and boys high school track team, it's all the same concept and all the same principle. And there needs to be a little different, maybe detail or approach, you know, with those different types of athletes. But yeah, some of the exercises and the way we go about things for Mary Beth are exactly the same as we do with Christian. And exactly the same as we do with our little, you know, freshman boy coming out for track for the first time. So it really is just a similar deal with a little, you know, you've heard me talk about a pot of chili, right? And it's just, you know, this kid might need a little more pepper and this girl over here might need a little more salt.
But still chili.
Still chili. And it's the same system.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, when I put Christian's program next to Mary Beth's program, there's probably a solid 90% crossover.
Yeah.
Mary Beth's going to have a little bit more track and field focus where, you know, and no change of direction or anything like that. And then Christian has those deals. Although Christian's always pressing me for more and more track max velocity type of work. And that's just from him of knowing that that's what's helping him on the field is his top end speed. He came out of his rookie year and that was our #1 focus. We got to raise your max velocity. And we, you know, he moved from about, you know, just 21 and a half or so to 23 and a half, almost 24 miles an hour over the last 4 years.
I love talking about this kind of stuff too. Chris Corfus worked with David Montgomery, the Bears, and in 8 weeks, he went from 20.9 to 21.9. You know, and I asked Chris, I said, could you take a group of 20 to 40 NFL football players and improve them all by a mile per hour? And he said, at least that, yeah. Because they are so untrained. Yep. David Montgomery said he didn't do any sprint training. Like his high school track coach was probably a distance guy and he was a thrower. He ran on the 4x1 because he's a great athlete. Sure. And then, you know, when they go to college, they're not exactly, until they go to the combine, they're not really timing much. I mean, if at all. And they're just really weight room centric. And so that's where I think, I mean, people say, now, wait a minute, 1 mile an hour is not much, though. Well, it was for DK Metcalf when he chased down Buda Baker.
About 8 yards worth on 100 meters.
Yeah, or 90 meters. Yeah. So yeah, it was. So it is, and that's what excites me so much. That if you can get McCaffrey, you said he was running 21 something.
Well, his on field, what do they call it there? The Gen Stats thing.
Yeah.
I think it was his rookie year. I think he was close to 22, as a 21 high or something like that. And that wasn't too sexy. So we got to work, and he ran. What did he go? He ran 0.82 for fly 10. This
yards.
This offseason yards.
And that would be
20. Is it 23 mid? Somewhere in there. And hey, by the way, you got to tell Corfist that Montgomery was getting on an airplane to come out here and train with me in the off season before COVID hit.
Oh, he was?
Yeah. His agent reached out to me, and he was coming out here. And it was that Thursday that we got shut down by the government that I called him and I said, listen, we don't know what's going on here. You might want to just stay put until we know. So I'm so glad that he found Chris and was able to do some stuff, because he was coming out here.
Yes. And what's sad is that everybody was shocked at how fast he looked in preseason. And then he pulls a groin muscle.
Oh.
And, I think he played, one-legged for a while.
Yeah.
And he is just now, I thought in the last game, if you take away the last 2 minutes, I thought he had a great game. He really looked quick and fast. And I've never seen him look like that before.
Right.
So, yeah, if you can turn somebody, if somebody can run, like Christian does, like 24 mid, I mean, that's what Marcellus Moore ran.
Yeah.
Marcellus was a 10.31 sprinter, and he ran 24.2 miles an hour. Yeah. So when you start talking about an NFL guy in his mid-20s running in the 24s, he's going to run 22.5 with ease in a game.
And he's at 207 pounds. Wow. It's not like we're working with, these skinny little guys.
Yeah. Marcellus weighed 149.
Wow. Yeah. One of the best success stories, honestly, on the quarantine season was I had a little gal back who I had at Valor at our high school. She's gone on to play at Manchester City over in England. They just won the FA Cup. And she trained with me for, 6 weeks while she was home. And she was 18.9 and got to 21.7 in 6 weeks. And she was, we're talking a girl that had been playing professional soccer for 5 years, graduated from Texas Tech, got drafted in the first round, and had bounced around, pro teams. So it's not like we were starting with a rookie, but she had never really done any kind of timed runs, real focus on speed since high school. She ran a little track for me in high school.
In my opinion, she was both untrained as a sprinter, but also detrained. Yeah. I love the word detrained, because so many of the conditioning things that soccer coaches do, because they say, okay, they got to run 9 miles in a soccer game, so we got to train all that jogging. Well, jogging don't win soccer games. It's the burst of speed that wins. And if you don't train that,
right,
you can't do it.
Right. And we really focused on her speed, and then she goes back, and it's like in my mind, it almost, once you've trained speed, it's almost hard to go backwards. That's the other thing that I love about it, because she went over there and they started playing their season, and they're doing some mild trainings between, games and things like that. But she ended up testing at 22 miles an hour while she was over there, and ended up being the fastest girl on her team.
There's not many 22-mile-an-hour girls in the world.
I know.
Anywhere in the world.
And she was, going from didn't play much to then she's playing more, and then was the featured girl holding the cup in the FA Cup deal. She plays for Team Canada as well. If you remember the gal that scored a goal in 30 seconds in the Rio games. Okay. Like an Olympic record. It was her that scored the goal. He took a ball off the midline and went down and hammered one home like in 30 seconds. It's still an Olympic record to this day.
I want to make sure I get this question in from my good friend Brad Dixon. And that is, every time I watch your presentations, I question back squats and squat depth. Is there ever a time you squat deep in a traditional back squat do you do any front squat?
Brad, we do a little bit of back squat, especially with the younger developing athletes. So I think, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that gets put out on social media is professional athletes and things like that. And we don't do a lot of spinal loading with our pro athletes. I find we can get a lot more bang for our buck deadlifting. We do front squat quite a bit with our athletes, especially like soccer players. And then depth wise, yeah, I think for tendon development and range of motion stuff, you know, at a developing age, it's important to get to depth, certain exercises. I've just fallen out of love with a big spinal load. I find that there's just so many, maybe 25% of the athletes that I work with are able to load a bar on their back properly with good shoulder flexion. They're able to, you know, get to depth without a, you know, a heel lift or things like that. And the amount of work that it takes to get a kid into those positions to get what we're trying to accomplish, which is an anabolic response and strength output, just isn't worth the time when we can put them on a hex bar deadlift and accomplish nearly the same thing. But no, I wouldn't want it to be out there that we never back squat or we never have any kind of squat involved in our programming. We definitely do that with our developing athletes.
And that's something I wanted to talk to you about. Chris Corfus reads a lot of Franz Bosch stuff, and he deciphers it to me in a simplified way, dumbs it down enough so I can understand it. And after about the third explanation that he's given me about muscle slack, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I would repeat what Chris says is that Bosch says that you have muscle slack and you must go from slack to contraction in like 100 milliseconds.
Yep.
And good athletes must be trained to go from slack to contract in very short times. And that's why doing things like reactive jumping and sprinting is so effective in training speed. You know, it sounds ridiculous to have to say that sprinting trains speed, but there's so many people out there that want to shoot me when I say stuff like that. So they go on to say that Franz Bosch says, as soon as you load a weight on your back, slack is gone.
Right.
And so you are not training the same type of slack to contract that you would normally use. And therefore, that's why the squat does not translate to sprinting very well. Would you agree with that stuff?
I would agree with that, and which is exactly why we box squat and pin squat quite a bit, where we try to break that concentric eccentric chain to allow for some slack to where we get that contraction similar to sprinting or a movement pattern. So it's much more like specific of a movement. It's not as general as just a good back squat. And I think there's really good stuff around, you know, the core stability and strength and mobility. But man, some kids just don't hip hinge very well. And some kids don't have ankle mobility, and some kids don't, you know, their shoulders are inflexible. And, you know, if you really, I mean, I've had really, really strong girls, Mary Beth Sant being one of them. I don't know what she could back squat, but it'd be a lot of weight, but you should see her little back. I mean, it's more like my wrist than, you know, a human's back. I mean, she's tiny. And so to put 300 pounds on her back with a bar is just way too much risk reward for me for a high end athlete than it is to have her pick up 300 pounds and hit, you know, 7 muscle groups that are there's a crossover. You talked about the Venn diagram. I think 6 of those 7 muscle groups are still being utilized.
Yeah. And at risk of sounding like somebody who's never been in the weight room, what is a pistol squat?
Pin squat. So
pin squat. I'm sorry. I couldn't even,
pin squat is kind of it's a modified version of a box squat. So instead of sitting on a box and then, you know, breaking that eccentric movement into a concentric movement on the way back up, you just set the safety pins at a certain level where you lower the bar onto the pins and then push it back up. I've kind of
very similar to a box squat.
It's almost the same movement as far as that goes. A little safer in regards to not having to worry about their low back and having any kind of relaxation in their core. So we've just used both variations.
Excellent. I'm glad we got that out there. There was somebody else that had a question. William asked, do you have any videos for the dribbling and stick drills? Now, the presentation had a lot of that. Do you have anything that's more expanded?
You know, I don't. And a lot of this stuff, it's funny. I'm headed down the business world of this. I've been an educational guy my whole life. And, we're opening our own facility and suddenly a whole bunch of people want some of the stuff that we offer.
Yeah.
And, we will likely probably put some of that stuff together and package some things for coaches that want it. We do, we have a Bounce Fire series, a couple videos floating around, out there, but nothing done professionally like JT and I did with the Mass Pacific Force, which is a nice clean look at, kind of how to implement it and all that stuff. So I don't have anything on hand that I could send in regards to like, here's how we teach a dribbling series or stick drills and things like that outside of what we put on social media right now.
And where would they find, we want to make sure you get all the money you can out of that video. And so we would like for people to buy from your affiliates link. Where can they get that link?
It's on coachtube.com. And
Okay.
so my JT Ayers is our business guy. So I'm just the good looks. So you'll have to lean on him a little bit on that. And he might even have a link on his website actually at Coach Ayers Performance. But I think on coachtube.com, you can look up that Lifting for Speed, Mass Pacific Force. Is a video him and I put together in the last month. It's a pretty good look at how Barry and originated it and how we have kind of modified it, made it work in our track programs. And
what is going to be the course that everybody's waiting for that you're going to put in the Feed the Cats certification program?
I think what we talked about it's been a little bit idle because of the new facility. But we want to put together something for you for an off-season football programming, kind of in a Feed the Cats type of approach to
Love
that.
it. Love it. That would be great. Let's see, there was something else I was going to ask you about. I'll check and see if there's any other questions first. All right. We're doing good there. Do you like the 23-second drill?
I love the 23-second drill. And I got something for you.
What's that?
26 seconds is the magic mark for your girls. So
26.
If there's coaches out there listening that want a 1-for-1, I mean, I have a very here at Valor, for whatever reason, and part of it's because we have such a successful football program. I don't get a lot of guys out during the fall or during the winter. We're pretty much a spring track program with our boys, but our girls, I got about 35 girls that train year round, and so I'm able to do a lot of things with them. And a lot of the stuff that you do, coaching boys only, time wise and things like that, I've kind of taken and modified a few of them, and that's one of them. So 26 seconds for if you're a coach out there that want to do that with your girls. I had my little quarter miler.
If you can get 4 girls that can cover 200 meters in 26 seconds, they're going to be hard to beat, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, it's same thing on the guys, and I don't know if there's a 1-for-1, but I do know that, my best boy hits 209 meters or 211 meters or whatever in 23 seconds. Our little quarter miler this year that's headed to Stanford, Camille Peisner, she'll run 53.8 this year in the 400 meters. She went 2:11. So,
yeah.
At 26 seconds, and we really debated, do we go 23 or 27, 23 and 27, because typically when we do if we were to do tempo work, if you go back to Clyde's formulas, there's about a 4-second differential in his stuff from the boys to the girls. And so, but 4 seconds seemed to be long to me, and I'm thankful we did 26 because she might have run into the fence,
Yes.
But 26 seemed to be really good. I think we had 3 girls cover 200 meters in the 26 seconds. One of our faster girls wasn't at practice that day. So we might have a handy little 4x2 this year.
Yeah, that's such a cool thing. Corfist, I didn't even know who he was when I first saw him at a clinic in 2008, and he talked about the 23-second drill. And I was so intrigued that I showed up at 7 in the morning on a Saturday to watch him do this. First of all, I was like, what in the hell are you doing practicing at 7 in the morning on a Saturday? But I went in there and was very caffeinated and everything. And it was probably the most exciting track practice I had ever witnessed. Yeah. And I remember him saying that if we have 4 kids that can run 200 meters in 23 seconds in practice, we're going to win the state 4x2.
Yep.
And whether that's true or not, that adds to that performance aspect of practice.
Right.
There was never a buzz in the air in any workouts that I ever went through in practice, ever. But God, kids will chase that distance.
They
Why?
love it. And it again, I've run a very similar workout for 15 years. And until I met you, I didn't have a name for it. I didn't have any necessarily like a distance mark or whatever, but it was kind of an all out effort for 200 meters or 150 meters or 250 meters, whatever our time of the year was. But it was a very similar workout. And then we added the time to it, little competition that way. And they look forward to it, man. They know we're running 23-second sessions. They don't necessarily love what it feels like when they're done with the second one, but they get jacked up to see where they're going to be. So yeah, it's been an awesome add to our program.
It sounds so easy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Guys, this is going to suck today. Coach, what are we doing? We're going to run 23 seconds twice.
Yeah.
We're like, what's the big deal?
Right.
And
right.
then it is a big deal.
Yeah. In fact, the picture of the little girl I put on my presentation up against the wall with one shoe off and everything, that was after her second 26-second session.
And I don't know about you, but my best guys feel the worst at the end of it because they'll push themselves the hardest.
For sure.
Marcellus Moore nearly died every time he did a lactate workout, but that was because he brought it.
Right. Yeah,
he's like saving it.
He's emptying the tank.
Yes, sir.
For sure.
And isn't it weird too that they never look bad at the end of the 23 or 26?
No.
It's only after about 3 minutes of that pollution circulating, the acidity in their body, and then they turn green. Right.
Yeah, a lot of puking on those days. I mean, that's what that lactic does to you. Makes you sick.
Yeah, that acidity, man, it just kills you. How long does it take for you to get through your boom fire series?
Man, that's kind of a loaded question because we literally have kind of a long version and a short version because we don't like I have been very guilty of wearing out our kids in warmups or wearing out our kids in drill work. And so we've created for that reason a long version and a short version. And so the long version is probably 20 minutes. Our short version is probably 7 minutes in regards to, and that would be an all-encompassing drill work day. We try to hit it every time we train. It's almost part of our warm-up. And then if we need additional drill work on top of that, for example, we do a little dribbling, we do some stick drills, we might do some, you call them booms, I think, booms, we call them switches.
Yeah.
We'll add those in on top of that. So, total drill time might be 12 minutes on a top end day.
And I probably know the answer to this, but I get the question all the time, because coaches want to like plug in stuff exactly the way we do it and all that kind of stuff. And I keep telling them, no, it's a way to cook. It's not really a recipe. Yeah. You could like change the speed drills or the boom fire. You could come up with your own boom fire series or whatever, but they're always wanting to know how much recovery. And I tell them I never measure it. I just know it about 30 seconds, maybe.
Yeah. And I think what's hard is you've done this for how many years? 40 years?
40, yeah.
50 years. How old are you again?
66. So, I'll be 62 in February.
You started coaching when you were 10. Good job. I think you have that inherent wisdom. You know what I mean? You've been around enough that you don't need a stopwatch. I'm the same way. I mean, I just finished 2 sessions over at my facility. I don't think I wrote a thing down. It was all in my head. I knew what to do. For young coaches, they want a formula. They want a workout written out. What I've gone to for all my coaches and for people that will call me and ask for those kind of questions is, instead of giving you every single exercise and every second and minute involved, let me tell you how we block out our system, which, again, I think I have a feeling I know exactly how you do yours, but it's, for us, we have a block that is kind of our RPR dynamic warm-up block. Then we have a block of sprint drills, which is where our bounce fire series comes in. And then we have kind of a ballistic plyometric block. And again, I'm not giving them every single plyometric, and because I could send you 50 pages of documentation on all the things we pull from, but where do those things fit into your programming is probably a good place for like a young coach to start.
And what a great, I think I called it boom fire earlier. Bounce fire is absolutely, did you brand that yourself?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, there's a story behind that Bounce Fire series that's crazy. When I was 23 years old, maybe I was 25, but I was a very young head coach, and I had had an athlete qualify for the U.S. Junior meet out in California. So I went out there, and there was a guy, John Woods was his name, and he was a white sprinter that made the finals at the Olympic trial, or at the national meet for the seniors. And I was just enthralled of like, who's this guy from Colorado that made the U.S. national final, and who the hell's training him? And so I kind of dove in and found out who was training him. It was this guy named Vince Stevenson and his wife, Debbie, and they ran something called Movement Training Systems. So I drove down to Denver, and I met him and watched a couple training sessions. I was just a young, hungry coach trying to learn. And I watched them, and they did this whole series, and I took meticulous notes, and it literally became my dynamic warm-up, which was going, shortly thereafter going to be coined the Bounce Fire series. Well, fast forward to 5 years ago, I'm at my alma mater, Northern Colorado, at an alumni event. The Big Sky Championships are taking place in Greeley. So I show up there, and there's a cute little blonde that used to pole vault at Northern Colorado there that's about 10 years younger than me. And, we start talking, and she's a coach, and she lives in Highlands Ranch, which is where our school is. And, hey, I've thought about coaching. You need a coach. Yeah, we'd love to have you. So let's meet. Well, turns out this is Vince and Debbie's daughter. So she, not only had I been utilizing this Bounce Fire series for 15 years, formulating it kind of myself, but now I have an assistant coach on my staff who knows it from the people that kind of sort of came up with it. So since
full circle.
In the last 5 years, we've really ironed it to be this systematic approach to learning how to push through your foot. I watched Corfus's deal. I loved his presentation on big toe and correcting some of that stuff. And that's a lot of what we're after when we Bounce Fire. And it's also applicable for change of direction. We do it laterally, we do it backwards, we change direction with it. It's a phenomenal system. And
lots of rhythm too.
Lots of rhythm, lots of muscle memory. We feel like in a 20-minute segment, we get a pretty good little workout in, as far as like we're moving fast, we're in that 95th percentile, but we're building some resolve and some capacity through it. And we're just thousands upon thousands of repetition, so that we take a lot of pride when when our kids run. They might not be the fastest kids on the track, but they're pretty efficient and they look pretty good. Your stuff, you look like Carl Lewis. I don't know if we look like Carl Lewis, but we feel like our kids hit pretty good positions and they're maximizing their ability to apply force to the ground.
Yeah, when people, I've had people criticize my stuff and say, oh, everybody knows speed drills is so old school and that doesn't work and all that stuff. And what I say is, when the hell do you coach? Yeah. If you don't go through some type of exercise, rhythmy, skippy type of things, you can't coach when they're running full speed. So you've got to have something like that.
I believe that, and I agree that, some people, speed drills don't make you faster. I think you're 100% right, where that's where all the teaching and all the cueing takes place. Because when you ask a kid to pin his ears back and run as fast as he can for 30 meters, they're not thinking about all those things. So you want to have hardwired those things through the drilling. And I believe that, what they do down at Altus, and, I've been privileged to spend time with Dan Paff, Vince Anderson. Those guys are some of the best speed minds in the world. And we can all disagree or agree about how we go about it, but those guys have coached good guys, and they all run sprint drills. They are hardwiring or self-organizing, the system to where they don't have to think about it when they're running fast.
Yep. And then it also serves as a warm-up.
100%. Yeah. Yep. Gone are the days like, if you ever see my kids jogging for a warm-up, come find me and put me in a headlock, because we do not jog. Our warm-up starts with an RPR, and then we go right into drills.
Now, I always say that when I share a video or something, I'm not showing my worst kid doing, you know what I mean? I even tell coaches, do
Totally.
not post some, your slowest kid running, trying to make him feel good for the day or something, because it doesn't make you look like a very good coach, And so when you get your incoming freshman,
Yep.
how long does it, I mean, your videos look really good.
Yeah.
How long does it take them to figure it out?
I say for some reason, there's a magic mark of 6 weeks. We start to see some big improvement in 3 weeks, but in 6 weeks time, and again, yeah, of course, I'm going to post Christian, and I'm going to post, Camille Peisner, and I'm going to post some of these kids that are really good because they look really good. And of course, it makes us look better. And I do a terrible job of posting. I'm pretty inconsistent. I'd love to do it more. And some people are great at it. I love following you guys. But I think at 6 weeks, we start to see that whether it's probably the combination of everything. We see their mechanics get better. We see their strength gets better. We see their fast twitch muscle recruitment has been, good. And so at the end of 6 weeks, we typically are like, hey, look at Johnny over there, man. He still sucks, but he sucks a lot less than he did 6 weeks ago. He looks like he knows what he's doing. And I mean, we have all kinds of those kind of kids too, for every, Anna Hall and Camille Peisner and, these kids that we've had, we have the same kids that you guys have too. And, we take a lot of pride in a 15-second 100-meter kid getting down to 13.5, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's still improvement.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's really important. I think there's something magic about 6 weeks, like when like if I decide to lose 15 pounds and start eating right and start working out better and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't see the results tomorrow.
Right.
And it seems like it's about 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's bad because the average person can't wait that long.
Right.
So they abandon what they're doing. But 6 weeks, I think, is really, matter of fact, I used to have something I used to talk about all the time, the 666 theory, that we are not what we did yesterday. We are what we did 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago, 6 years ago.
Right.
That we are a sum total. And we have to remember that when we're coaching 15-year-olds.
Right.
Because they've only had a couple of weeks with us, you know, and where were they 6 years ago, 6 months ago? They probably weren't getting good training. Yep. So, I think that reminds us that we have to think long game with all of our kids. And I think a lot of places, they don't think long game.
Yeah, I think you have all kinds of hurdles to overcome. You might have some kids coming in with bad habits, and they've been, it might take as long to break a habit as it does to gain a new one, and so I think, you could have I'd almost rather have just a moldable blob of clay to take a kid that doesn't know anything, to have a kid that's been maybe taught the wrong way, or, classic soccer player, who doesn't know how to use their arms. Well, they've repeated that movement for years. And so, it's going to take us a little bit of time, maybe years,
yes,
to make them very efficient, and we got 10,000 hour that sucker.
Yeah, I used to say I didn't call them the unmolded clay. I call it the blank canvas.
Yeah, blank canvas. Sure.
Give me a kid that's never played soccer. He's poor, and his mom and dad never signed, or probably didn't have mom and dad both. Mom never signed him up for baseball, never played basketball, but he's fairly athletic. That kid responds so quick. Whereas the kid that got signed up for soccer when they were 3, you might have trouble because they're like a professional jogger.
Totally. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I just got my daughter back from college. She's a senior down at a school in Arkansas playing collegiate soccer, and I trained her and her teammate today. And we tested a little. We don't have a lot of space in our facility, so we went a 5-yard run in with a 10-yard fly just to get some speed. We do that almost every time we train. And she goes, "Dad, that's the fastest I've run since I left you back in May." And, how sad is that? And their resources aren't great, but, it's what's important to you, and that's super important to us.
Hey, tell me about your 6'7" son. Is he a senior?
He's a senior. Yep. He's a senior in high school here at Valor. He's a primary basketball player. He's tried to run track for 3 years in a row now, and we'll see how it goes for a senior year. We shut him down his freshman year because he had football, basketball. He made the varsity basketball team as a freshman. So we wanted to give his body a little break his freshman year. Sophomore year, he broke his ankle, missed the season, lost junior year to COVID. But at 6'7", the kid can run a little bit. You've seen him on Twitter. But he's like a .93 fly guy at 6'7".
So that's close to 23 miles an hour?
Yeah, close to 23.
Wow. Because I've seen him, and he doesn't look like he's running that fast because he's so damn long-legged.
He's very, his stride length's unbelievable. He's all legs. He's 6'7", but he's kind of got the leg, like the trochanter length of a guy 6'9". So he's got a really short torso, long legs. He's been training around track and field his whole life, so he's got good sprint mechanics, even as tall as he is. But he gets off the line pretty well. He pushes really well. But I guess it just kind of goes to show you, there's not a one type of kid that can be, fast. We've just committed to, even though you're a basketball player, you're going to do speed work, you're going to run. I appreciate it. I think it was your video or Chris's video that had the big, tall basketball player for the, was it the Celtics or something that was training with you?
Chris, because Chris is working with the Celtics right now.
Yeah. And I'm like, that needs to happen in every sport. My son, from sprinting and doing some plyometrics 3 days a week during the quarantine season, can dunk a basketball like you wouldn't believe. And it's not like we did any vertical jump training or specific, we didn't even have a weight room for most of quarantine, but we sprinted. And the athleticism that we've seen on the basketball court from that has been unbelievable.
And let's end our talk. I could talk, as you know, all afternoon, all night with you. And yeah, if we start getting drinks on the table, it might go into tomorrow. But tell me, you've already told me this once, but I think everybody needs to hear it, how you were having him lift during the basketball season.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we implement our mass specific force system for all of our athletes during season. So we lift. Our basketball team lifts twice a week during the season. So on non-game days, they're gonna go in and do a heavy deadlift with a plyo, and we keep all the sets and reps really low, but we keep that nervous system on deck. I can't remember, maybe it was Craig or somebody put it out on Twitter about you have to liven up the nervous system about every 3 or 4 days, or it kind of goes offline for a little bit. And so during even competition stuff, even Christian lifts heavy on Tuesdays, and Thursdays we do a nervous system workout with some med ball throwing and movement type jumping to keep the nervous system live for Sundays.
And I think it's just so important to understand that specific force type of lifting, mass specific force, where you are doing only concentric, has no next day cost. There's no soreness, and it just throws out the window the whole no pain, no gain bodybuilder mentality. And so your basketball players can go through this.
Yeah. We had our entire basketball program lift on it 2 years ago. Saw incredible results. I literally think we had 11 out of 11 of our varsity guys could dunk a basketball. And, I was a 6'10" high jumper and really couldn't dunk a basketball that great in high school. So I think to have 11 high school kids on your basketball team dunking a ball is pretty impressive. And I attribute a lot of it to the way that we trained them. And it eliminates them from putting on a bunch of muscle mass. If they need mass, we know how to do that too. But for kids that are fairly well developed, and in basketball, having a little muscle is important, but we don't want to be too muscly because they want to be fast and cat-like on the court.
Last question: how many hours a day do you work?
Too many.
You're a grinder, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I am. I'm a grinder.
That's why you can't keep up with me on Twitter. I'm not a grinder.
Well, that's exactly right. I'd love to do more stuff, post more, and do travel more, but I guess I'd try to reinvent myself at age 47 and open a facility and stuff. So I've been pretty busy lately.
Yeah. Well, thanks for everything you do, and you're forever in our community at TFC, and we'll just keep expanding our network, and can't wait. I hope I can make it out to Denver sometime soon.
Let's get her done. Appreciate it, Tony. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. See you, man.